Hey everybody, it's Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. You're hearing something, your computer's not wrong. I'm playing you a little music. Dr. Jones and I were just chatting. We'd agreed we'd play a little of the Staple Singer record from 1965 called Freedom Highway. I will turn this down because I know y'all are gonna start complaining it's too loud. Can't possibly be too loud today. I'll play this really loud. But suffice to say, you are here probably because you were expecting to have an opportunity to gather with and visit with Dr. Clarence B. Jones, who is a personal counsel and draft speechwriter for Dr. Martin Luther King. He is with us from his home in Palo Alto, where thankfully he and his wife, Lynn, are safe and have been sheltering in place throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Jones in just a moment. I know we have folks gathering in the room. Before we do that, if you've been with the network before, then this ought to feel familiar to you. I'm going to ask you to take your finger or your cursor, whatever you got, go down to the bottom of the screen, and you will see we're all living a Zoom life now, so this ought to be familiar to you, that bar that pops up there. And go into the chat if you would. Just very briefly, crack that open, okay? Make sure that you've got it set, because it's probably default to all panelists, which means you just be talking to Dr. Jones and I. What I'd like you to do, if you would, is make sure you're talking to all panelists and attendees, so we're talking to each other, coming together as a community. Well, then, go ahead. If you would, and Dr. Jones, if you do this too, please type your name in, where you're coming from, and then something that we've been doing from Professor Brene Brown. Hey, Bill, how are you? And you know this.
Oh, I see. I see.
Two words. How are you doing? Two-word check-in. This is an idea we're borrowing from Professor Brene Brown. Two words. I see. Hi, Julia. Saying hello, great to see you. Julia from the Hilton Foundation, how are you? Lots of that two-word check-in, friends. How are you doing? Fired up, ready to go, hanging in. Okay. Oh, wow. Melissa, how are you? Angela, how are you? Working hard. Lori, how are you? Bob, how are you? Okay, you guys are starting to go too fast. My hope is that not only will you be talking to us, but you'll also see each other, right? And let's see each other for this next hour, and let's talk to one another, okay? So if you're had enough, I saw someone say that, frustrated, I think that passed by. It's going way too fast for me, gang. But if you're seeing somebody and you see maybe they're having a hard time, just reach out. Kindness and generosity are free, and it's a good thing to be offering to one another. We are together right now for this next little while. So with that, a couple other things, just a piece of housekeeping for you. We are recording this, as we always do, and my colleague, I believe Kareem, is making some notes for us. So Kareem Alston will be making notes that we will share out with you along with the video after we conclude. With that, I'm going to turn the music down for everybody. Nicole, how are you? Very worried. I know that's a way to please. Listening and learning, Margaret, I hear you. I see you, frustrated, overwhelmed and frustrated, Sam. I see you. Heartbroken and angry, Melinda. I understand. It is hard to understand that what we're seeing, what we're witnessing is happening inside of America. But you didn't come here to listen to me. It is my honor now to pass the microphone to someone that it is one of the deepest honors of my life to say I can call a friend and a mentor, Dr. Clarence B. Jones. Sir, why don't you
thank you so much. As I'm listening and I'm looking at the chat panel, I see so many, the names of so many people that I've met that we've spoken to in the past. We've had conversations at various conferences we've attended to. Well, first of all, Sean, thank you. Well, first of all, the Communications Network, thank you for inviting me to participate in this discussion. It is not a happy time in our country. And a couple of days ago, my colleagues at the University of San Francisco asked me if I would participate in a Zoom call. And I said, yes, but I want to think about it first. And I said, rather than doing a Zoom call, I'd like to sit down and really put some thoughts on, write down how I feel about this. And then let's see whether we can share it with the university community, which is what I did in this captioned a statement on the national crisis. I don't know whether you've had a chance to read it. I hope you will have a chance to read it for those that you have not had it. But let me just say at the outset, you know my background. You know the number of years I've been around. And I say to you with some regret and sadness to all of you, several of whom I have come to know as I look at your names. And those of you that I've come to know, I know that you share a collective devotion to making our country better and to using your skill sets to communicate the mission of the network and communicate the mission of your respective foundations and organizations that are part of the network collectively with an effort to make your part of the country, your town, your village, but our country a better place. That's what you do. That's what you all do. And so I must tell you, I tell you out of respect and affection for you, that we seem to be at a place in our country that I have never experienced before. We seem to be at a place in our country that doesn't bear any parallel. We seem to be at a place in our country we regrettably may have turned a corner on those persons in the population that still retain hope. You know how devastating it is in a society when you have a significant or a substantial segment of its population generically has given up hope, and that is sometimes expressed in one form of extreme anger and nihilism and just, I don't care about anything. But hope, when you don't have the sense that no matter what you do or you have done, it's not materially going to make any difference. If, for example, if you're a Black man, a member of the Black community in America today, after 400 years, after the Emancipation Proclamation, after all the legislation, after the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, after the March on Washington in August 1963, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Housing Act of 1968, after all series of progress, including the election of an African American as the 45th president of the United States. If you look at all of this, and still the parents of young African American teenagers have to be concerned that when their sons leave home, will they return to them that same day? We can't, this is, and so I speak, we speak together as friends. And I'm blessed that you have welcomed me into the ComNet family. And those of you whom I can't necessarily see the face, but I see your names, and I can remember. I mean, I can't remember the specific conversation, but I can certainly remember that we had conversations, and I remember who you are, what you look like in several cases. And I know you wouldn't be I know you wouldn't be on this call, you wouldn't be part of the network if you didn't continue to share the same kind of values that you shared when we first met one another the second time. So I have to say to you, friends, I'm speaking to you like we're all part of one extended collective family. We have a problem in our country. And collectively, let us just, David Halberstam wrote a book, The Best and the Brightest, about how the smartest people in the world got the Vietnam War wrong. So let's just turn that meaning around and say, we may be part of the best and the brightest. We may be part of the segment of America that really cares the most. We're We have heart, we care. We collectively want our skill sets to make a difference. And I have to tell you, out of respect and love for you, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that anything we can do short of some major material divisions in our country, that we can make a difference. For example, I think that those small segments of people who wanted to honor the young man, I'm getting old, George Floyd, I think his name is, George Floyd. There's a small segment of people who are associated with those of us who want to honor George Floyd, who really have come to the conclusion, we've been through this before, hasn't made any difference. You know, that hasn't made any difference. You know, and the only thing that they're lying to us, nothing going to be any difference. All bets are off. I remember Dr. King saying to me, Clarence, you know, you got to understand when people are rioting, that's their form of speech. Rioting is the language of the unheard, he would say. I think we're experiencing the significant segment of our population that has given up, and it's not all related to George Floyd, it's related to the consequences of the coronavirus and changing the whole economic base of our country. Those of us, I presume that most of us on this call today, we're not challenged to know whether we're going to be able to have something to eat tonight. Maybe for the weekend, but not tonight. You know? Well, there are people out there that I think have given up. I even thought to myself, well, maybe suppose those people in rioting, suppose they had a chance to come and sit and talk to Sean Gibbons and my friends at the Communication Network. Suppose they had a chance to participate and to see, you know, you don't have to be going around breaking windows and all that. Take it from me. You know, you have any respect for me, I can really show you that there's some really, really good white people. Yeah, there's some good, really meaningful white people who care. You know what I'm afraid? I don't think they give a damn anymore. I don't think when someone as collectively skilled as we are in communications, okay? Communications mavens, communications experts, when someone is collectively as skilled as we are, and I consider myself to be a reasonably skilled communicator, when I am telling you that I don't think that there's anything that I can say, anything that I can say that will persuade and change the conduct of many of the people who are rioting. I don't think there's anything I can say. Now that depresses me. First of all, it depresses me personally because it hits my ego. I said, well, you know, I can persuade anybody to do anything. Well, the fact is I can't. Can't. Because you have to have something called hope. You have to have something called hope. And so this is, Sean, this is a plea to, I want all of us, you know, I want I don't know whether you've had a chance to read my statement on the national crisis. But separate and apart from my statement, why you know why the communications network came together. You know why you're all part of this network. You know why you are. Okay. You and we're supposed to be the people who pride ourselves on developing the skill sets on how to communicate the programs of our respective companies, of how to communicate the way in which foundations we're associated with can most effectively use their resources. And I'm here to tell you, regrettably, whatever foundations you're working for, whatever foundation program you're thinking about initiating, I think it's too late. Well, I'll take that back. It may be too late. I won't say definitively that it is too late. But it's scary, friends. I see all these beautiful names as I'm looking at you, the chat. So, Sean, I'd like to hear from people. I hope you had a chance to, if you haven't had a chance to read the statement on the national crisis, certainly read it after our discussion is over. So, Sean and Tristan, I think I'd like to have your guide as to how we can most effectively use our time, because as I said, I may have said earlier, I participate in this because I regard you as extended family. This is like an extended family discussion.
Well, you know that we love you.
Yeah, I love you guys.
We are grateful for the fact that you're making time, and we're grateful that you and Lynn are both healthy. One thing I suppose we could do, we did this yesterday, and we're being a little bit less formal than we might be under other circumstances, but I think that's what we need to do, is I would invite people, if you're interested in joining us, and Tristan can do the Zoom thing of promoting somebody, and they can ask you a question. You're also welcome to put questions into the Q&A, which is also down there next to the chat. If you want to have a question, you can do so. But I suppose I have a few questions, because I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I was born after the riots in 1968 that succeeded the assassination that occurred after the assassination of your friend, Dr. King. And those eventually came to an end.
Those eventually what?
Those eventually came to an end. Those days of discord and anger ended. And I think one of the things Kristen and I were talking about earlier today was, how does this end? How does this end?
Good question. Right. Yeah, just how did it end?
Well, in '68, my recollection from reading history books, you lived it, was that there was an effort by leaders across sectors to remind us of what bound us together, the values that we shared, the journey that we were on as Americans, that the project that we undertake just by virtue of being born here requires us to do more, to do better. I am not hearing that right now. I'm taking.
Did you know President Johnson created the Kerner Commission report, which I recite in my statement, and it issued some very harsh truths in its statements, And I looked at some of the conclusions of the Kerner report when I was preparing that statement, and I started to tear up, because I teared up and I said, "Oh my God, how are we still?" When I remember when we used to, those of us who have children, I remember when my kids were young, be driving, they said, "Are we there yet?" "Daddy, are we there yet?" Well, I'm here to tell you, regrettably, we ain't there yet. And we should have arrived. We're not there yet.
While I'm mindful that those of us who do communications work cannot talk our way out of this, despite many of our great skills.
You can't.
I am mindful that communications isn't just about words. That in its best, realized to best effect, communications, it shares a root with the word community. And that there's a piece of our work that requires us to think about community, because it's hard to talk to people you don't know, right? We communicate, and we've certainly seen this with your neighbor, Mr. Zuckerberg, and some of the other .coms down the road from you, that they sell you community, and they're quite confident that we all listen to people that we know or admire or have some association with, far more than folks we don't know.
Right.
A big piece of the sacred task that's before us, I think, is to think about building community. I think that's been a journey that we've been on at the network. And so I wondered maybe if it's not about communicating, but about building community. And a piece of that, I think, has to come from invitation. You know, asking people to join, as we did today. Come join us. Join us. Is that possible? Is there a piece of that might be available to us for us to invite people to come together? I mean, because people are joining right now in the streets, right? They're discovering where other folks are gathering, and they're going out, and most of them, by the way, peacefully, right? That's really worth remembering, is most of these folks are stepping out of their homes after watching the evening news or encountering information on social media, wherever it may be, knowing they may not be safe, and they're going out anyway because they think it's important. What can we do that goes beyond our words, but uses our skills?
Well, certainly this is a challenge for the collective skill sets that we have. And the gauntlet is, not the gauntlet, but the challenge is, I almost am hesitant to say this, but I have to be truthful with you. I'm challenged to think if there's anything we can say that's going to make a difference. I think whatever we believe might be appropriate to say will only have relevance if it's tied into something that's going to result in immediate action. Words, words, words. We've heard all that, Dr. Jones. That's what I hear. Yeah, we love you, Dr. Jones. You did the best you could, but, you know, I mean, that's what I hear.
I know some of those were the conversations that occurred at Sunnylands, the younger generation. And with that in mind, maybe Kareem, pal, if you don't mind too terribly, because you inspire me, I maybe could, Tristan, would you mind promoting Kareem? This is Kareem Alston, who's been working with us at the network, and he's a neighbor of yours, Dr. Jones. He's living just up the road in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are a lot of young people out there who are going to succeed you and me in the kind of work that we've dedicated our lives to, which is to see the world as it is, be practical and pragmatic, and understand that we can't be satisfied with what we see, and we have to try to make it better.
Right.
So if Kareem can be promoted, that's all right, Tristan. We'll have him add. And while we do that, perhaps we can take a question from one of our colleagues here. So Lori asks, Dr. Jones, what can we do to give people hope besides voting and raising our voices up?
She says aside from voting?
Aside from voting and raising our voices, as many of us are doing in using tools that we might have available to us, donating to key civil rights groups like the NAACP. What else can we do to give people hope? And I know you've sort of answered this already.
No, that's a tough question. This is a question that haunts me. Haunts me day and night. Let me show you. This is how I'm troubled. I'm trapped in my own dialectic here, and that is to say, politically and philosophically, I believe that this, where we are head to come. In other words, I believe that, well, regrettably, until the country reached the point where it runs the risk of shutting down. So my general philosophy today is that you have to shut the country down. Everything has to, some things are so wrong, you just have to shut it down. Somebody, I don't think the powers, the government, the people of the government really reflect and feel the pain. And so just among this limited Zoom call of friends of my network, I don't necessarily want it to be quoted on all the networks, but I don't mind if it's quoted. I'm speaking honestly. We're at a point where well, let's just stipulate, excuse me, no matter how well-intended, and no matter how heartfelt, whatever we've done before, it has made, of course, some difference. But in the total scheme of things and responding to the pain of a substantial segment of our population, particularly resulting from one event that goes to the very essence of dignity, killing Black men, mothers. I can't tell, I mean, I can only tell you, mothers have cried and sobbed to me. Like I'm supposed to be some sphinx. What can I do? Mr. Jones, what can you do to save my child? Well, I can't do anything to save the child. What do you say to a mother who got up this morning or wherever she is, when a teenager leaves the house, cries most of the day because she's not sure he's going to come back alive? So in direct answer to your question, what can we do? I guess I'll have to go on record. Immediately, I can't think of any specific thing that we can do that's going to make a difference unless in ways that I don't fully have at my fingertips. We have to communicate to the world, to our country, that, as Dr. King said in his speech, The March On, this is the fierce urgency of now. What can we do with our collective skill sets to convince people that, you know, there really is a reason for you to have hope. There really is a reason for you to go home and to study and to be the best that you can be. What assurances can we give them that if they do that, it'll make a difference in their lives? And I'm regrettably saying to you that this country is about power. And this country is about white power. And white power collectively, as of yet, is struggling to figure out what can it do. And I'm saying to the collective white power that if you don't do something, you're going to lose it all. The rioting, well, let me be quite specific. The rioting is not going to lessen, it's going to get worse. Listen to me. This is coming out of my mouth. This is different than every other time in our country. This is not going to be a situation where you have a few days, few weekends. This is, the cork is out of the bottle. Something has to occur. Well, one of the things that could, no, I'll be quite specific. The indictment and the commencement of the criminal process against those 4 police officers would make a real difference. because it would restore a modicum of hope that maybe the system isn't as bad as we thought it is. But in the absence of that, I mean, nothing's going to change. I mean, my own university, I mean, they love me and respect me. You know, a Jesuit university, they've made cuts and so forth. And they're saying, well, you know, we're going to have to shut down your institute unless you can raise X. They love me, but that's the reality because they feel the squeeze, you know? So I've talked enough.
Our friend Kareem has joined us very kindly, and he's just up the road from you in San Francisco. Kareem, you're muted right now, my friend, but you had a question for Dr. Jones.
Yes, Dr. Jones. I'm honored to. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
I'm honored to be able to ask a question and sort of gain knowledge from your brilliance. But I've heard a lot from people talking about why people quote Dr. King, I think, incorrectly in stating that, you know, demonstrating and what we're seeing is not proper recourse, and saying that ballots and voting is the only thing we can do. But I was wondering, from your perspective, if you could sort of talk through why voting itself is not enough, in the sense of, you know, we need to get things on the ballot, right? Or we need to hold politicians accountable for who they represent, not just by voting for them.
Right. Well, you know, so much of the movement which Dr. King led was about codifying, getting enshrined in current legislation at the time, the 1964 Civil Rights Act and 1965 Voting Rights Act, to enshrine what has already been passed in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. But I'm glad you asked that question, because I read and hear people and say, well, nothing else matters unless you vote. Well, it's true. Voting deals with the question of power, and you have to be able to effectuate your exercise of power by voting. But you, in between the time between when you go to vote and what's on the ballot, there's a lot of time between whether you're having an election in a state for a year, every 4 years, a big period of time. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to vote. You have to work 24/7 to make a change. And making a change really starts locally. It starts locally with your school boards, starts locally with your board of supervisors, your local boards of power, getting involved. It gets involved with education, being sure that the school system that educates our children really, one, has the resources to do it, and two, having the resources, has a program that teaches our children. There are some well-meaning, active people who seem to think we need to just cast aside conditions as we are now and just drop everything and just concentrate on voting, without dealing with the question that a young mother's got to send her children to school. We have to deal with the question of jobs. We have to deal with the question of healthcare. Many of those people who demonstrated, several, you know, their unemployment checks have run out. Their benefits have run out. So, in direct answer to your question, it's not the elevation of one form of political activity, voting. Oh, no, obviously, voting, you have to do that. But if you don't vote and deal with other things that affect our community on a day-to-day basis, I mean, little things such as garbage pickup, you know, like, I mean, I walk out sometimes when I was last out, I haven't been out in a long time, certainly haven't been to San Francisco. You know, walking down the street, you see garbage on the street, trash, you know. Why is that? Why are the homeless? Why in the richest country in the world? Why in a place where there's $1 trillion platform of wealth in Silicon Valley do we still have people sleeping on the sidewalks? If somebody has an answer to that question, I'd certainly be, I'd like to hear it. Explain it to me why that's happened. So I don't know that my answer is sufficiently responsive to your question, but I'm just speaking from the heart, my friend.
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
One of the things that we shared, Dr. Jones, with our colleagues yesterday was your friend, Dr. King's a passage from his book, Where Do We Go From Here?
Yeah.
And specifically, last book you wrote. And and the question implicit in the name of the book, where do we go from here? But also the meditation he offered on white liberals, or maybe that name is shifted to white progressives. And I suppose that means he's talking about me or our colleague Chad Nelson, who's going to join us in a moment, or others. I've heard a lot of conversations over the last couple of days about folks talking about how do we stay in our lane? How do we make sure that we don't overstep our bounds or become political? As if this moment that we're in is political, other than being about power.
I don't understand what you mean. How do we?
I guess my question would be, what role do folks who are in positions of power, white progressives, your friend Dr. King talked about the fact that they were oftentimes the most pernicious, dangerous threat to making progress. Is that still true, or have we made progress since his death in 1968? Are there more allies to the African American community?
It has to be. Obviously, it's still true because we haven't made progress geometrically in response to the magnitude of the problems we have. Just what I just said earlier. Think a moment. You're in Washington, D.C., but I'm here in Silicon Valley. So I just said, how is it possible in Silicon Valley, where there's $1 trillion platform of wealth, how is it possible that we can have homelessness? The greatest technological minds, Elon Musk put a goddamn rocket going up, okay? And we can't solve the problem of the homelessness? Is that beyond the intellectual capacity of Mark Zuckerberg? Is that beyond the intellectual capacity of all these brilliant people? I mean, I don't know.
No, it's look,
I'm just an old.
To your point, if we knew the answer, we'd have solved the question. But we could talk about California history and the decisions that it's made over time. And actually, the place where Chad is very familiar, where California has abrogated its responsibility to actually make the legislature and the governor work. They put everything out to a ballot, and not surprisingly, people don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah, but you invited me into your house, our house, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I teach a 15-week course, which I created. Been teaching it for 7 years now. From slavery to Obama, renewing the promise and renewing the promise of Reconstruction. Oh, renewing the promise and redeeming Reconstruction. That's how we have been, okay? And the first part of the course is spent merely educating people about the institution of slavery. Some people said to me, Dr. Jones, I visited the African American Museum in Washington. And what you talk about in the course, I actually saw. I actually saw artifacts of what you were talking about. I didn't even know that they did those things to people. Now, why am I saying this? Is at the heart of the problem the people who have the power are white. Institutionalized power is white. Institutionalized power that got its power is because over the years, they were able to exclude us from participating and taking us off in another whole controversial direction. And I don't want to have a discussion of it, but it is a historical fact that much of the wealth of this country was built on the unpaid labor. That's something not debatable, okay? Now, it is debatable as to whether or not there should be reparations. That's a debatable question. I don't want to waste time discussing that. But there's no debate about the debt that was created. Not one single debate whatsoever. And what's happening is that, you're having younger versions of Clarence Jones. You're having younger, you're having 19, 20, and 22-year-old, 23-year-old people, Clarence Jones, not an 89-year-old guy, but a 22-year-old Clarence Jones. And they looked at the same things that Clarence Jones has looked at. And they say, hold on. Don't tell me you can't make art. I mean, there's a sense of unwillingness to listen anymore because institutions have lost their believability component. Power is not believed. And what better example of it is when you can have 1,052 Black men killed in over a period of about 5 years. 1,000 police killing 1,000 Black men. 13% of the population. They're killing Black men 2.5 times the rate they're killing white people at a minimum. We're only 13% of the population. Okay? And so the straw that broke the camel's back is when you have George Floyd. He's killed for somebody, and they look at nothing. If you can't redeem, if you can't do anything about George Floyd, that's what they're saying, then all bets are off. Don't talk to us anymore. You have lost all credibility. I don't want to hear a goddamn thing you have to say. Don't tell me about this program and that thing. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. And that's where we are. And you can trot out Clarence Jones, and you can trot out Jesse Jackson, and you can trot out Al Sharpton, you can trot out some of the old people. Well, Clarence Jones we love. Some of the others may have some credibility issues, And I've talked to him over the phone. I talked to somebody from Michigan over the phone. Clarence Jones, Dr. Jones, we love you. Don't be angry don't be angry at me, Dr. Jones. Don't be angry at me. But I had to do what I had to do. I had to go out and just, because they don't listen to us anymore. So that's what we face. And that's what those of you who are gathered here today, you are the best. You are the best of the best in communications. And most of you, the majority of you, are white. You're the best of the best. You are challenged with how do you get the young, not me, but how do you get a Kareem Austin, and even people younger than Kareem? How do you get a Kareem Austin to believe that when you say something that you're going to make a difference in the criminal justice system, that you really mean it? How are you going to get them to believe it? Because he may say, You know, I've heard this, you know, you said this to my father, you said this to my uncle, you said this to Dr. Jones. I don't see any difference. That's where we are. And you know, you're like family to me. I'm looking at your kid, Sean. You're like family to me. So we talk candidly, right?
Yes, we do.
There's nothing we can't say.
No.
Nothing we can't say to one another. So, yeah, and you know, so I can, you know, you ask me the questions, I give you the answers. And but let me know, I'm going to put a very heavy burden on you guys now. If there ever, I know, you know, we maybe because of the pandemic, we may not be able to physically get together like we normally do. But if there ever was a time where the substantially white communications network, if there ever was a time for you to be challenged to see whether we can come up with a message to white institutions that have power, i.e. foundations and so forth, maybe we have to say to them that whatever you were doing in the past isn't working. Maybe we just have to say, I love you, you know. I mean, we work together, but we just, you know, it's not working. So maybe we have to go back to the drawing board, you know, because it's not working in terms of being responsive to the need. And quite, now this is a further heavy burden on you, okay? If those of you in the communications network, I can't see you all, but I can see your names, and I can see some of you. Of those of you in the communications network, particularly the white people in the communications network, if you don't understand it, and if you can't get it, then we're lost. We're lost. There's no hope. I'm telling you. Because you, as a group of white people, are the best that this generation can offer. You're honest enough to say, I mean, I look at some of you're honest enough to say, yeah, I know I'm white. You know, I mean, you don't have any problems. You know, you're not hung up on, you're not being, you know, you're not uncomfortable with talking about it. But if we can't, I mean, I have to go back to the charter, what the communication network was established to do. But I mean, I feel it's regrettable that the pandemic occurred, Sean, because if there ever was a time when we should be gathered in one place together, if there ever was a time, this is the time for us to do it.
Well, I guess I'll make a little news. So I'm going to share this more publicly, more broadly later, but we have had to cancel.
And Kareem, I see your face, man. Kareem, man, take Kareem's face down. I hate looking at somebody more handsome than me, man. Take it.
Kareem, I'll catch up with you in a little bit, pal.
It's impossible, Dr. Jones.
Take your face down. I don't want to look at anybody more better looking than me. Come on.
Well, then you would know he's also beautiful inside and out.
Okay.
We are not going to be able to gather in person because it's simply not safe to do.
Yeah.
So there's no reasonable way to do that. But we will gather virtually, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about what we have planned. And I wasn't intending to do this now, but we will be gathering this fall virtually. It won't be a conference. It'll be something different, and we're exploring a lot of that now. It's going to be inclusive. It's going to be or we're going to invent and make mistakes, but we're going to try our damnedest because we know how much it matters. Because we're also talking right now in an election year, which is important, and a census year. And so the theme of this year was meant to be intention, sort of a play on I-N and then T-E-N-S-I-O-N. We were living in tension before COVID because we were living in tension before the passing of George Floyd or the attack on Chris Cooper, or the murder of Breonna Taylor, or the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. We've been living in this society in tension, and we know that. And I think we have a sacred responsibility to acknowledge that, to see it, to speak to it, and then to figure out ways to make changes that are necessary for not just for me or for Kareem, but for the kids to come. Those young people, whether they're 19 or the two little people who I'm homeschooling just next door. We will come together, and I can tell you a few folks that we know who will be with us.
Sorry.
Will be part of it, sir.
My apologies.
Joy Harjo, who is the U.S. Poet Laureate. She's a native woman from Oklahoma.
Right.
The U.S. Poet Laureate. She will be with us. Nicole Hannah Jones, who is the recent Pulitzer Prize winning writer for the New York Times, who effectively this beautiful thing, right? She took the resources of the New York Times, did an investigative
1619 project, right?
1619 project. Thank you.
Right.
And then our shared friend, Alexis McGill Johnson, who is presently serving as president of Planned Parenthood, but also founded the Perception Institute, which has done a lot of work on brain science and racism, how our brains receive information and sometimes make decisions that we aren't even conscious of. So those are just some of the conversations we're going to be bringing to you, and we're hoping to confirm others and share all of this more formally with everybody.
How are you going to do this logistically?
We are figuring that out. I mean, the reality is we'll probably use technology like this, although perhaps not this technology, so that we can all see each other and be in community together and chat. And so the other thing we're going to try to do is make sure that it's free, that everybody who wants to join us can join us. And so all of this, you know, again, I'm talking out of my mouth now, and I'm going to have to prove it with actions, but all of this is coming.
Right.
But I'm mindful of time, and we had invited our colleague Chad Nelson, who I know you know well, who's the CEO of the Surfrider Foundation, so another neighbor of yours in California, although just a little bit further down the coast, to ask you a question and be in community with you.
Hey, Dr. Jones, great to see you.
Great to see you again. I'm always jealous. When I grow up again, I'm going to be like you, man.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to all of us today and be so real and honest. This is obviously an incredibly challenging time for our nation. And so the fact that you have the fortitude to come out here and educate us is really valued. I wanted to mention, I don't know who Shanita Rashid is, but she made a great comment on the comments that I wanted to reiterate and put into a question for you. She said, yes, words won't help at this point. We need more people to join us and lend their privilege and resources while letting people of color lead the change. You know, how do we put our white privilege into action instead of words, and do it in a way that puts people of color in front to lead the change? I would love to get your sort of thoughts on what those actions could be. If there is any silver lining in what's going on right now, I feel like the more white people are paying attention to what's going on than I've ever seen before in my lifetime. And so I think there is an opportunity here to really try to shift that power. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the actions people like me can take to help people.
Chad, you know,
Kareem lead.
Yeah, Chad, you know, I'm glad you brought up something. You know, it is I didn't include it in my remarks, but you can see it with your own eyes with television. And the television, I must say, I am pleased. I don't know that I'm surprised, but I'm pleased of the large number of white people, white persons that have been participating in these demonstrations. And I look, when I see white persons or a white person, I look at them closely in terms of what I can see. You know, you have you have young people out there. You have young mothers with their young children. You have young white. I mean, I'm just pleased that the larger number of white people are participating today than at any other time I've seen in any. I don't want to call this I don't want to narrow it, so I don't want to call it a civil rights demonstration. I'd rather just call it a demonstration for change, okay? Arising out of the grievances of the Black community. This is what's so beautiful and amazing, that there are young people like a Chad, like you, Chad, you know, younger and older, in different parts of the country, maybe for the first time. I don't know, but I see them in numbers that I've never seen before. And Sean, I think this tells us something. This tells us something that as we begin to figure how we're going to craft a message, I have to be careful how I say this. Well, this is family, so if I say it wrong, you can correct me. But I think what I'm trying to say, I want the outreach of the network to reach young white men and women. I'm not saying you shouldn't be interested in speaking to our brothers and sisters in the Asian community, sisters in the Indian community, and the Chicano. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that historically, from where I've come from, let's be honest, it's white institutional power that runs this country. And the extent to which we can magnify the number of young people that I've seen participating in these demonstrations, it tells me something new and different has happened. I see something. Maybe it's just the sheer brutality. Maybe it's just the sheer contradiction of seeing policemen causing George Floyd to die, and look at the time that has passed and to see there's still sort of kinks in the system, that there's only one officer that's been arrested. Maybe there's, whatever it is, a number of white people are saying, enough's enough. As I saw one sign that says, you don't have to be black for Black Lives to Matter. I love that. There was a sign, you don't have to be black for Black Lives to Matter. So that's a real challenge. That may be that may be something that, as we plan our next convention, our gathering, that may be something that we should think about. How do we have to walk a fine line in which we're not trying to put a necklace of white guilt around people, That's not what I'm saying. But I just look at, I'm just reading quickly some of these comments, some of these comments that I read, some of them are from white people whom I know, so I know you're white. Some of them I know. They're asking for that. They're saying, yeah, candidly, that's what we must do. I mean, I'm just looking on the chat screen here,
Yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us. That is.
Yeah. And you know what? If not us, who?
If not now, when?
If not us, who? If not now, when? You got my point, right?
Yes, sir. I certainly do.
I don't want us to, we are David Halberstam, whom I knew, please don't be offended, but we are presumably the best and the brightest, right? If we can't do it, and particularly my beloved white colleagues who are part of the ComNet, if you can't do it, if we can't do it together, then who can? Who can? We have to offer leadership.
We're certainly not seeing it elsewhere. That is for certain. And I'm mindful, I was having a conversation with our colleague Tristan a little bit earlier today as we were planning for this, and I know we're right at the top of the hour, so we may lose a few folks, but stick with us if you'd like. He was, I hope I'm not giving up his privacy by saying he was feeling a little bit hopeless when he woke up this morning, and I was trying to comfort him, and probably more than anything comfort myself, because I feel a lot of the same way. I'm hurting.
Right, we all should be hurting.
This is a hard time. It's hard to even live in a world where we have technology where you can witness the murder of a man. And
well, that's sure. And you and I have come to know one another close, but just some of you people some of you, my friends who I see you out there chatting, I know you're hurting. You know why I know you're hurting? Because I met some of you. And my recognition and memory of you, you've got to be hurting because you're so decent on the inside. Chad Nelson, you've got to be hurting, brother. The Chad that I've met and had a chance to talk to, you've got to be hurting. They don't make white folks like you every day. So I know you're hurting. You don't have to say it. You don't have to open your words. Don't say anything.
I'm struck by one of the things I said to Tristan. I don't know if anybody will think this has any kind of wisdom in it, but I think there's something to this. I think a piece of protest is being kind. A piece of protest, you're just walking in the world and being kind and generous, making eye contact with people, saying hello. Some of the things that, I mean, maybe I'm just too corny for my own good, but I believe being decent and kind and loving to people. A lot of the stuff we learn in church, if you go to church, is the path forward. It is a form of protest to walk into the world with hope. It is a form of protest to walk into the world with kindness. It is a form of protest to the world to be generous when you see anger.
Right.
To accept it and deflect it and try to help those people find a way forward.
Right.
To not amplify what's evil and base and wrong. And we are certainly seeing a lot of the folks, again, protesting right now.
Right.
The folks who are protesting right now are trying to send a signal, a symbol.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I entirely agree with you with the premise that we have a deep structural problem within this country that has existed, a stain that's existed for 401 years, if I'm doing my math properly. And it's not going to end tomorrow. And it's probably not the moment that we find ourselves in. It's not going to end within the next few days because of the kinds of leadership that we're seeing from politicians, whether that's governors.
But as I say in my piece, it's going to be repetitive. If not us, who? And if not now, when?
That's right. That's right. And so I think for everybody, the challenge perhaps.
I can't say it any better than that's how I ended my piece. If not us, who? If not now, when?
Yeah. I think if you're thinking with your hands clenched, you have to think about opening up your arms and finding a way to give your love out to other folks. I know that sounds kind of hokey, but I honestly think the power that we each have as individuals, regardless of the skin that we travel in, is extraordinary. That power is our vote. That power is our voice. That power is our conduct and character, and treating other people with dignity and respect, and being vocal when we see something wrong.
Right. I also see some of these chat remarks about people being tired.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm tired. I want to speak to those who say that. I speak to you as part of an extended family. In the face of the institutional pain that's being inflicted upon the African American community by out-of-control police, fatigue and tiredness is a luxury we can't afford. You've got to go down deep into yourself and find just enough energy to go one more day. Just one more day. In the belief that eventually those consecutive one more days can make a difference. Now, the challenge we had as we opened is I don't want to get so cynical that I don't think it's going to make a difference. What I did try to say in my piece, I've never seen anything like this before in our country. And that we're at a, I don't know, I call it the tipping point. I could have said breaking point, I could have said nodal point. I use a tipping point because I know that's the language they use out here in Silicon Valley. You know, it's a tipping point. What are we going to do? I mean, we don't have a choice. We're in this thing together. I mean, we've already been locked up by the pandemic. We see that, you know, we all want to get out and have a normal life. And now getting out has even put a further burden on us. We can't go back to it being the same. There's too much pain. And we have to let our courage in what we believe, we have to hold on to it so much so that it doesn't get preempted and taken over by agents provocateurs. People who just stand around just waiting for an opportunity to seize on something that has legitimacy, to push their own crazy agenda, you know? So, I mean, I have confidence that all of us who are together now, you know when a con job's being done, you know the difference between legitimate protests, you know. There's no way in hell that somebody breaking into a store to grab a cup of trousers and suits, how that's going to change the condition of the police. Is that going to change the conditions? Is that going to make the police be any more responsive by breaking in and rioting? No, they know that. Now, if it's a way of saying, I'm angry and I'm not going to take it anymore and I don't believe in anything, I understand that. But we have to pull back for a moment. There's anger and there's constructive anger. And I'm not going to be forced to have my anger be channeled in a way that is not constructive to my agenda. I'm not going to let a third party impose events on me that are going to make me change my agenda. I'm not going to go and break a window. I'm not going to support criminality under any circumstances. If I have to be the last person standing, I will not do it. Because I believe I'm old. I believe there is something very good in people. I really believe that, you know, that human beings are, there's some good, you know, I've seen it. In my lifetime, I've seen rabid white segregationists. I mean, I had a person in my life, he's deceased now. I mean, he couldn't be more, he came like the worst place out of Mississippi, okay? And over the course of his life, that white man changed. I saw it with my own eyes. So I know it can be done. But first you have to decide, do we love this country? People saying to me, well, I'm gonna go to another country. I'm gonna go to Canada. I'm gonna go to this. I said, well, hold on. My first of all, for me, my ancestors built this goddamn country. I ain't going nowhere. Okay. I'm not leaving it. It's mine. I got a vested interest in this country. I ain't leaving it. So, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir now. So, I mean, you know, we all love, I'm so blessed that you welcome me into your family. Now, I just want you, just because I have longevity, that doesn't mean I know everything. Doesn't mean you have to believe everything I write. Doesn't mean I'm not subject to criticism. You can criticize me and tell me I'm full of shit. I don't care. That's not going to affect my love for you, my respect for you. I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to.
If I said those words to you, you know Dana would come and get me. So
okay.
You also have to know I don't disagree. I think I'm reminded of a lot of people who are more eloquent.
We got you got a big challenge on you, the communication network. You have a real challenge out here because I can say, if not us, who? If not you, who? Who's going to do it?
And the purpose of the American project is to find what we find and make it better. And not everybody takes on that challenge, but the people who are with us right now, that is their purpose, right? It's all of us who wake up and roll out of bed every day and decide, as Chad does, that he walks to a beach, to a place that he loves, to a place that's sacred to him because it's just part of his whole life.
Right.
That he's not going to accept the idea that it can't be clean, that it shouldn't that it shouldn't be a place that's welcoming and available to everybody now and in the future.
Right.
We all choose those things. I think one of the challenges that I've seen within our sector, and I'm not trying to in any way diminish some folks, but sometimes we get stuck and we think we misapportion sort of our priorities, and we think, well, I'm focused on climate, or I'm focused on health, or I'm focused on animal rights, and these are all worthy things, but we forget that they all are interconnected and interdependent, and that we all have this particular issue is particularly true of America. And it is all of our project. It is part of the American project, is to make this a more just, more humane, better place of opportunity and justice. And it doesn't feel like that right now. And under these never before seen circumstances where we're dealing with a dangerous pandemic that's sweeping the globe, it's really hard to understand what the end to this particular moment looks like, the next chapter looks like. But I'm reminded of what Mitch Landrieu has said, the former mayor of New Orleans, which is that our responsibility right now is not to build it back the way it was. It's to recognize the places where we see things that we know to be wrong and to build it better. There are things that we can celebrate and honor and bring forward, and there's things that we're going to need to leave behind. But the thing we can't leave behind is human beings. That's unacceptable. That's not an option.
Right. But as I said, I being like a broken record of not us, who, if not now, when? We don't really have a choice. We really, all of you are with me collectively. If you care, I withdraw that. I know you care. Knowing that you care means that we don't have a choice. Sometimes life gives you a choice. We don't have a choice. Because if we turn our backs and walk away, it means we give up and we cede the battle and the streets to those people who want to destroy everything we hold sacred. Black people, brown people, white people working together in this country. It's so simple, but guess what? It's sacred. It is sacred. Do you know how sacred it is? Remember the picture in Grant Park when Obama was elected for the first time in 2008? You remember that picture?
Very well.
Okay. Obama didn't get it. Black folks voted for him in a high proportion, but we're only 13% of the population. If all the blacks voted 100%, there's no way we could have elected Barack Obama. We did it. Barack Obama was elected because there were a substantial number of white people, like the white persons who were part of the COM network, who believe in America and who believe that we can make the country better. And that's the challenge we have right now. Those riots that we're seeing, that's a challenge to us. Those riots that we see out on the street, that's a challenge to us. They're saying to the COM network. Every time you see this television screen with demonstrations of various parts of the country, there's a chyron that goes down the bottom. You just don't see it. You know what the chyron says? Communication network, are you listening to us? Communication network, are you listening to us? Every time you see it, communication network, are you listening to us?
Well, I think we see it. I know.
All right, brother.
And a powerful piece of this is seeing, right? And then a powerful piece is not just seeing, but testifying and participating and supporting. And a piece of that maybe is for all of us to recognize there's a lot of power within the foundation and nonprofit world.
Oh, there is. And you have my email is Jones, the number 2, at usfca.edu. I want to hear from you. I mean, I'm looking at you now, but I want to hear from you.
And I just put it in the chat. Hopefully I got it right. But I know you're also, and I should thank you in advance for this, sir. I know you're going to be gathering with Com Network New York and some of the other local groups around the country. And so I'm going to hopefully get to see you again in the next couple of days. But for now, I think mindful, many folks have been with us beyond the hour. We can leave it there and hope that maybe we could ask you to come back and join us. And I hope.
Oh, you anytime. Anytime.
And you know you're going to be part of what we're planning for the.
Anytime. Just you got my proxy.
And Chad, thank you for making time for us, and Kareem as well, my friend. Deeply grateful to everybody. Be safe and well. Try to go do a kind thing, maybe for somebody you don't know. You'd be surprised what could happen. Thanks.
Thank you, my brother.
Safe and well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.